The galaxy had long viewed humanity as insignificant, a minor species confined to a watery planet on the edge of the Orion Arm, and the great councils of the Celestari, Varen, and Zalfek empires had not bothered to hide their contempt or indifference toward Earth, dismissing human technology as primitive, human diplomacy as naive, and human culture as a quaint curiosity best catalogued in history archives rather than feared on battlefields. Yet in the shadow of that hubris, humans went about their business with a quiet determination, their scientists and engineers pushing boundaries in secrecy, their diplomats weaving webs of alliances and back-channel negotiations with species the galaxy's empires ignored, and their military quietly expanding capabilities with an efficiency and adaptability that no alien intelligence could anticipate. It began with a series of unremarkable events. Scouts from the Zalfek fleet appeared near Jupiter, ostensibly to study asteroid patterns, while Varen surveys mapped the outer rim of the solar system, dismissing communications from Earth as inconsequential chatter, and even Celestari envoys, who had once enforced trade embargoes, treated human messages with polite but condescending dismissal. Yet beneath these seemingly trivial encounters, humanity's awareness of interstellar politics and alien ambitions had grown, and their strategy was patient, methodical, and ruthlessly intelligent, knowing that the galaxy would only make a mistake once. The first radar warning arrived quietly when the human deep space observation arrays detected multiple Zalfek warships redirecting toward the Kuiper Belt, a maneuver intended to probe Earth's planetary defenses under the assumption that resistance would be weak and uncoordinated. Yet aboard the human command station, scientists and military analysts did not panic, instead using the opportunity to observe alien tactical formations, energy signatures, and fleet communication protocols, feeding every detail into advanced predictive models that simulated outcomes across hundreds of variables. And when the first messages were sent to the Zalfek admiral demanding clarification of their presence, they were met with arrogant assurances that no threat existed and that humanity would pose no challenge, statements that only strengthened the resolve of the human leadership. For they understood that confidence rooted in underestimation is always a precursor to catastrophic failure. Across Earth, engineers refined the orbital defense grid, integrating AI-driven countermeasures and experimental propulsion systems that could alter trajectories with precision no alien had accounted for, while diplomats reached out to neighboring systems, offering protection in exchange for intelligence, creating a network of observation posts that gave humans an unprecedented real-time view of galactic movements, all while maintaining a facade of innocence and technological modesty, because humans had learned early that the best weapon in the galaxy is one your opponent cannot see coming. When the Varen fleets attempted to send reconnaissance drones through the outer asteroid fields, their craft were intercepted by unassuming probes that silently relayed every specification, movement pattern, and energy fluctuation back to human command. And when they attempted minor intimidation by disrupting orbital satellites, the humans' rapid, adaptive responses neutralized the threat, without a single casualty, leaving alien commanders confused and increasingly uneasy, yet still underestimating the intelligence and coordination of a species they had long assumed to be backward. Even on the diplomatic front, human negotiators maintained composure as Celestari envoys tried to coerce Earth into unilateral trade agreements and non-aggression pledges, using careful language to stall, probe, and gather data, all the while secretly coordinating with lesser-known civilizations who had themselves suffered under galactic oppression, creating alliances of convenience that positioned humanity not as a naive planet, but as a growing power with allies ready to tip the balance should provocation occur. And as months passed, the aliens' dismissive attitudes began to fray, evidence in the increasingly aggressive maneuvers and urgent communications intercepted by human intelligence, which now recognized a pattern. The galaxy's empires were acting recklessly, assuming humanity would yield or remain passive, and every decision they made played directly into a strategy humans had been preparing for decades, a strategy that relied not on confrontation first but on meticulous preparation, observation, and the precise timing of their response. The tipping point came when an unprovoked strike was attempted by a small Varen contingent in the asteroid belt, aimed to destroy mining installations that humans had developed in the shadows of major celestial bodies, expecting resistance to be minimal. Yet instead, They encountered orbital interceptors that moved with uncanny coordination, disabling the attackers' ships with precision electromagnetic pulses and non-lethal systems designed to preserve alien life but assert human dominance, leaving the Varen crew shocked and sending their reports back to homeworlds filled with uncertainty and panic. Simultaneously, humanity revealed subtle but undeniable technological superiority in propulsion, energy weapons, and communication systems, demonstrating that while the galaxy had laughed at Earth for centuries, humans had quietly advanced far beyond expectations. And as news of these encounters spread among the alien hierarchies, internal debates erupted over whether humanity was merely lucky, deceptively powerful, or a danger the empires had grossly underestimated. While on Earth, leaders remained calm, knowing that these were exactly the reactions they had anticipated, the initial dominoes of a cascading revelation that would soon force the galaxy to recognize that misjudging humanity was not a mistake that could be corrected, but a catastrophe already in motion, and the stage was set for the moment when humans, long underestimated, would make their first decisive move, not out of malice, but as a natural assertion of their intelligence, resourcefulness, and unyielding resolve to protect themselves, their allies, and the fragile balance of life in the galaxy that had spent centuries assuming. Earth's silence and weakness meant irrelevance. As the shockwaves of the Varen miscalculation reverberated through the halls of alien command, humans quietly escalated their preparations, transforming what had been defensive measures into a cohesive strategy for asserting control over encounters that might have otherwise spiraled into chaos. And while no human leader sought outright war, all understood that deterrence required demonstration. And the coming weeks would show the galaxy exactly why misjudging humanity had consequences beyond imagination, starting with a coordinated expansion of deep space surveillance stations that were disguised as research outposts but secretly monitored hyperspace lanes, energy fluxes, and diplomatic signals from every major galactic power, allowing humans to predict movements, intercept communications, and even subtly manipulate information, creating an illusion of weakness while masking a level of coordination and technological prowess that no alien intelligence could fully comprehend. And as fleets from the Zalthek and Varen empires attempted minor provocations to test Earth's defenses, they encountered increasingly sophisticated counters, ranging from automated drones capable of disabling entire ship systems without harming crews to adaptive energy shields that could absorb, store, and redirect hostile fire in a way that left the attackers stunned and questioning their own assumptions. And this was only the beginning, because humans had recognized that the key to Galactic influence was psychological as much as technological, and each encounter was meticulously planned to instill doubt, fear, and confusion among the empires that had long dismissed them, while simultaneously signaling a level of competence, discipline, and restraint that demanded respect. On Earth, the political and military leadership moved with synchronized efficiency, blending decades of research, centuries of historical lessons, and the innate creativity of humanity into strategies that leverage not brute force alone, but ingenuity, surprise, and precision. And as alien diplomats attempted to probe human intentions through emissaries, they found themselves navigating a web of controlled disclosures, partial truths, and carefully staged demonstrations of capability that made us seem simultaneously approachable, yet terrifyingly competent. And the aliens, conditioned by centuries of interstellar arrogance, increasingly underestimated the depth of human patience, the precision of their coordination, and the subtle ruthlessness of their strategic planning, while human scientists continued to develop and deploy technologies that blurred the line between offense and defense, capable of neutralizing fleets, satellites, and even orbital infrastructure with minimal collateral impact, leaving opponents bewildered and increasingly hesitant to engage. And this hesitation was exactly what humans needed, because inaction by the empires allowed humans to gather intelligence, form alliances with lesser-known species who had previously suffered under galactic domination, and stage maneuvers that gave Earth and its allies unprecedented leverage in negotiations that no alien command structure had anticipated. It was during this period that the first formal warnings reached the Celestari Council, messages asserting that humanity's capabilities were greater than previously believed, and that continued aggression or miscalculation would invite catastrophic consequences. Yet the Council, arrogant and skeptical, debated these reports as if exaggeration or coincidence explained the anomalies observed by field commanders, failing to understand that humanity's strength was neither accidental nor boastful, but a deliberate accumulation of knowledge, planning, and adaptive innovation, And while the Celestari argued, humans quietly prepared the first visible demonstration of their reach, sending unmanned vessels equipped with advanced sensor arrays to strategic points in previously unmonitored sectors, silently observing the movement of alien patrols and transmitting real-time data back to Earth, while at the same time, human diplomacy worked to protect vulnerable systems and species that the empires had either ignored or exploited, quietly ensuring loyalty and gratitude that would later translate into both intelligence and strategic support. And in the shadows of these maneuvers, humans continued to refine their understanding of alien psychology, predicting reactions, testing assumptions, and preparing contingencies for every possible response, aware that patience was as much a weapon as technology, and that the galaxy would soon realize that the greatest strength of humanity was not just in their machines or fleets, but in the depth of their foresight, the adaptability of their leaders, and the relentless determination of a species that would not be dismissed without consequence. As minor skirmishes escalated in intensity, with Varen and Zalfek reconnaissance missions repeatedly neutralized in ways that preserved alien life yet demonstrated clear dominance, rumors of human prowess began to circulate among the ranks of the galactic forces, whispers of a planet whose fleets moved with impossible coordination, whose defenses anticipated every maneuver, and whose diplomacy simultaneously coerced and protected. And the psychological impact was immediate, causing hesitation, miscommunication, and even internal conflict within. The alien empires, as commanders questioned their assumptions, debated strategy, and feared that a direct confrontation could result in losses they had never imagined, while humans observed, analyzed, and adapted, understanding that every moment of uncertainty introduced in the enemy mind was a strategic advantage that could be leveraged for the moment when humanity chose to act decisively. And even as aliens debated the extent of this threat, humans quietly completed the construction of advanced command nodes and hyperspace-capable vessels that could deploy rapidly, reactively, and unpredictably across critical sectors, ensuring that any attempt to coerce or attack will be met with a response calibrated to maximize both deterrence and strategic positioning. And by the time the first formal communications requesting negotiation or de-escalation arrived from Celestari, humanity had already established a network of surveillance, alliances, and defensive infrastructure so comprehensive that any misstep by the alien powers would trigger consequences of their own making, a situation they had created by underestimating the patience, intelligence, and coordinated power of a species they had assumed would never rise beyond insignificance. And the stage was set for the first true test of humanity's strategy, a test designed not to annihilate but to expose the cost of arrogance, the price of misjudgment, and the fact that for centuries the galaxy had ignored a species whose potential was restrained only by the limits of imagination and opportunity. Yet neither restraint nor patience would last forever, and soon the first catastrophic lesson will be delivered in a way the Celestari, Varen, Zalfek, and other empires could not ignore, a lesson in the peril of misjudging humans who had spent centuries quietly preparing for a moment that would redefine every balance of power in the known galaxy. The first tangible consequences of humanity's patient strategy began with precision strikes that were anything but reckless, as humans activated a series of pre-positioned orbital platforms and hyperspace-capable strike vessels designed to neutralize enemy assets while avoiding unnecessary destruction of life, and the galaxy, still steeped in the arrogance of centuries, was utterly unprepared for the speed, coordination, and intelligence underpinning these maneuvers, with Zalfek survey ships finding themselves immobilized by energy fields they could neither penetrate nor predict, while communications relays meant to coordinate fleets were systematically isolated and rerouted by human algorithms operating faster than any alien neural network could interpret, leaving commanders unable to react effectively to unfolding events. Simultaneously, Varen mining stations that had been used as staging points for incursions into human-controlled space were disabled silently and efficiently, their operations halted and crews quarantined for protection rather than punishment, demonstrating a calculated balance of deterrence and moral clarity that bewildered enemy strategists who had assumed humans would act with the emotional impulsiveness they themselves would have. And across multiple sectors, intelligence gathered from alliances with smaller civilizations allowed humans to anticipate patrol patterns, supply routes, and command hierarchies, enabling surgical strikes that created disruption without open conflict, a concept so alien to the Empire's experience that their own fleets began to hesitate, unsure whether engagement would lead to victory or catastrophic loss. On Earth, The human high command coordinated all aspects of the operation with seamless precision, using decades of accumulated historical knowledge, simulations, and predictive models to anticipate enemy reactions down to the individual admiral's probable choices, and every action taken reinforced the growing narrative among the empires that humans were not only capable of defense but possessed an uncanny ability to manipulate the strategic environment itself, turning apparent vulnerability into a weapon. And the first incidents that would be remembered as a catastrophic awakening for the galaxy unfolded when a Zalfek reconnaissance fleet attempting a direct approach to Earth's orbital perimeter was neutralized with a combination of gravitational manipulation devices, electromagnetic pulses, and adaptive drone swarms that disable propulsion systems without harming the crews, leaving alien commanders stranded in orbit and forced to surrender their operational control for days while humans collected every piece of data about their tactics, command hierarchy, and communication protocols. At the same time, Celestari envoys, who had previously treated Earth as an inconsequential outpost, found themselves facing a diplomatic demonstration that was as effective as any military action, with humans orchestrating an unprecedented multi-species coalition to prevent escalation while simultaneously exposing the incompetence of alien intelligence assessments, forcing the Celestari Council to acknowledge that the humans' capabilities far exceeded their prior estimations and that any further attempt to pressure Earth could trigger consequences they were ill-equipped to handle. And the ripple effects of these interventions extended beyond the immediate participants as neighboring civilizations that had been quietly oppressed or ignored began to reevaluate their alliances, offering intelligence, access to resources, and tactical support to humanity in a demonstration of both gratitude and strategic calculation, creating a network of influence that expanded Earth's reach across multiple sectors without a single full-scale battle. The psychological impact on the galactic empires was equally profound, with commanders, scientists, and diplomats forced to confront the reality that their centuries-long assumptions about humanity were catastrophically flawed, and internal debates erupted over how to respond. Some factions arguing for immediate withdrawal or negotiation, others advocating preemptive strikes that, without accurate understanding of human technology and strategy, risked total annihilation. While on Earth, humans monitored every discussion, every movement, and every intercepted message, preparing contingency plans that could react instantaneously to any aggressive action, and a combination of technological superiority, predictive strategy, and diplomatic leverage meant that humanity could choose when, where, and how conflict might escalate, a level of control that the alien empires had never encountered. And when the first message arrived from the Veran High Command, tentatively proposing ceasefire talks after losing nearly a quarter of their reconnaissance fleet to human interception, the humans did not celebrate, because they understood that this was only the beginning, the first sign that the galaxy was beginning to recognize their error, and that every misjudgment, every assumption that humanity was weak or passive, would be paid for in a series of increasingly costly lessons. Concurrently, humans expanded their protective efforts for vulnerable species in contested sectors, establishing forward operating stations, providing resources, and deploying monitoring systems that prevented further exploitation, actions that both strengthened their moral authority and created practical advantages, as allied species contributed intelligence, manpower, and specialized technologies that complemented human capabilities, and these interventions further amplified confusion and fear among the empires, who now faced the simultaneous reality of a highly capable adversary and a coalition they had never predicted. And by the time Celestari and Zalfek leaders convened emergency councils to assess the rapidly deteriorating situation, humans had already demonstrated that they could shape the battlefield and the diplomatic landscape at will, setting the stage for more decisive interventions, while the galaxy as a whole began to understand that Earth was no longer a passive backwater, but a hub of coordinated power, intelligence, and resolve, and the first catastrophic realization that underestimating humanity would cost empires dearly was now fully underway, with strategic consequences that would only deepen as humans prepared for the moment when restraint would give way to active assertion of their position, not out of conquest, but as a necessary demonstration of the consequences of arrogance and the futility of ignoring a species that had spent centuries quietly preparing to defend itself and its allies with precision, intelligence, and unparalleled coordination. With the first waves of controlled interventions complete, humans shifted from strategic demonstration to selective dominance, activating long-prepared systems that allowed them to influence entire sectors simultaneously, and the galaxy, still reeling from the initial shocks, was unprepared for the precision, coordination, and subtlety with which humans now operated as orbital platforms, autonomous drone fleets, and hyperspace-capable strike vessels move with silent efficiency to neutralize threats, secure vulnerable trade routes, and protect allied species from exploitation, all without triggering full-scale conflict, yet leaving the empires acutely aware that every miscalculation, every attempt to assert power over Earth or its allies, will be met with consequences carefully calibrated to demonstrate human capability without unnecessary destruction. And the first truly decisive incident occurred when a Celestari mining fleet attempting to exploit a resource-rich system under human protection found itself cut off by gravitational manipulation grids, energy nullification fields, and coordinated drone swarms that systematically disabled propulsion, weapons, and communications, forcing the fleet to stand down while humans remotely maintained control of vital operations, all while gathering intelligence and documenting the Empire's tactical and strategic errors for future planning. Simultaneously, humans began implementing a series of rapid response maneuvers that leveraged hyperspace shortcuts previously unknown to alien fleets, allowing small human contingent to appear unpredictably across contested sectors, reinforcing allies, intercepting aggressive units, and demonstrating a reach that far exceeded what the galaxy had previously assumed. And as news of these interventions spread through Varen, Zalfek, and Celestari channels, debates erupted within councils, with factions warning that continued aggression against Earth would result in strategic collapse, while others argued for bold strikes, failing to anticipate that any such strike would play directly into human preparation, because humans had built contingencies for every conceivable countermeasure, every potential attack vector, and every diplomatic gambit, and their patience and foresight ensured that they remained several steps ahead, their moves calculated to inflict strategic lessons rather than uncontrolled destruction, leaving the empires unsure whether they were being outmaneuvered by luck, by superior technology, or by a species whose ingenuity far surpassed all prior assumptions. On Earth, leaders monitored every sector with unprecedented granularity, using AI-assisted simulations, predictive modeling, and intelligence from allied species to create a dynamic operational picture, and every action taken was designed to simultaneously protect human interests, safeguard weaker civilizations, and create visible consequences for those who had underestimated humanity. And these efforts were complemented by subtle psychological maneuvers, such as carefully timed communications, controlled leaks of capabilities, and deliberate displays of coordination that amplified fear and confusion among alien commanders, forcing them into reactionary decision-making rather than proactive planning. And as Celestari envoys attempted to negotiate, humans carefully guided discussions to reveal capability without threatening escalation, demonstrating a balance of strength and restraint that only heightened the galaxy's growing apprehension. Meanwhile, Varen and Zalfek reconnaissance fleets, still recovering from the initial interventions, were systematically disrupted through a combination of orbital interference, cyber manipulation of fleet systems, and carefully orchestrated ambushes, all executed in a way that preserved life but destroyed operational effectiveness, leaving alien commanders questioning their own training, tactics, and assumptions about human predictability. And as their internal confidence eroded, reports began to leak between councils that humanity's capabilities were beyond anything previously observed, encompassing technology, coordination, intelligence analysis, and psychological strategy, and that underestimating Earth had already resulted in losses and strategic setbacks the empires could not easily recover from. At the same time, human diplomacy continued to expand influence, reaching out to civilizations who had quietly suffered under imperial domination, offering protection, trade, and technical assistance, creating a coalition of dependent and allied species that further magnified human strength. And these alliances served a dual purpose, both providing tangible resources and intelligence while also sending a clear message to aggressive empires. Humanity was neither isolated nor naive, and any attempt to intimidate or coerce would face not only a capable adversary, but a network of partners invested in enforcing consequences. And as alien councils debated responses, humans activated specialized rapid response contingents capable of intercepting attacks or reinforcing allies anywhere within weeks. And these forces demonstrated that even the perception of human power was enough to alter enemy behavior, creating hesitation, miscommunication, and strategic paralysis across multiple fleets. and the realization that Earth was no longer a minor planet but a hub of coordinated influence, intelligence, and tactical capability sent shockwaves through every empire, as leaders faced the undeniable truth that misjudging humanity had already triggered a series of escalating failures that could not be easily reversed, and as the first fully coordinated multi-sector maneuvers were executed, neutralizing threats, securing allies, and demonstrating overwhelming strategic clarity, the galaxy began to comprehend that a species long dismissed as inconsequential was now actively shaping the balance of power, teaching a lesson that would echo across every council chamber, starship, and occupied system. Misjudging humanity was no longer a mistake. It was a catastrophe in progress, and the full consequences were only beginning to unfold. By the time the galaxy fully realized the scope of humanity's capabilities, Earth had moved from reactive defense to proactive strategic assertion, executing a series of carefully orchestrated operations that demonstrated both precision and overwhelming coordination, and the first game-changing action occurred when a Zalfek command fleet, confident from centuries of unchallenged expansion, attempted to blockade a key resource system under human protection, only to encounter a network of orbital interdiction platforms, autonomous strike vessels, and stealth deployment corridors that had been meticulously prepared over decades, allowing humans to neutralize the fleet's mobility, communications, and weapon systems without incurring casualties. And within hours, the Zalfek admirals realized that their assumptions about human weakness had been catastrophically wrong, forcing a retreat and leaving their allies exposed while sending shockwaves of panic through their homeworld. Command channels. Simultaneously, Varen forces attempting to leverage interstellar hyperspace lanes for rapid assault found themselves trapped in temporary spatial distortions, precisely engineered by human physicists to delay movement and disrupt fleet cohesion. And as they struggled to regain control, human liaison teams coordinated with allied civilizations to provide alternative supply routes, intelligence gathering, and strategic reinforcements, effectively transforming what had been a minor defensive maneuver into a multi-sector display of dominance that simultaneously secured human interests, protected weaker systems, and inflicted maximum psychological disorientation on the alien empires, and the cumulative effect of these operations was immediately apparent in the holds of Celestari, Zalfek, and Varen leadership, as internal debates turned into accusations of incompetence. Panic replaced calculated arrogance, and commanders questioned whether any single human move was reactive or part of a larger, meticulously planned sequence that they had already been caught in, revealing the extent to which underestimating humanity had already become a systemic failure. On 8th, the human high command maintained a balance of restraint and decisiveness, ensuring that all actions reinforce a narrative of control, power rather than wanton aggression, and as fleets and orbital platforms engaged with precision, simultaneous diplomatic maneuvers unfolded, leveraging the growing coalition of allied civilizations to apply pressure through trade, intelligence sharing, and strategic positioning, creating a multifaceted network of influence that further magnified human strength while demonstrating to the galaxy that Earth's power extended beyond sheer technology into alliances, foresight, and coordination, and as reports of human operations filtered back to alien empires. Disbelief quickly gave way to fear, as leaders recognized that every assumption about humanity, passivity, weakness, technological inferiority, had been catastrophically flawed, and every move that had seemed insignificant in past decades now contributed to a cumulative demonstration of capability that no empire could ignore. The turning point came when humans executed a coordinated liberation of several occupied systems, simultaneously disabling occupation forces, restoring governance in native civilizations, and deploying humanitarian and logistical support that secured loyalty while exposing alien failures. And the psychological impact was devastating for the empires, as they witnessed not only the effectiveness of human technology and strategy, but also the moral clarity and resilience of a species previously considered inconsequential. And as alien forces attempted countermeasures, they found themselves outmaneuvered, trapped, and systematically neutralized in ways that preserved life but shattered operational capability, leaving fleets stranded, communications compromised, and commanders facing the undeniable reality that misjudging humanity had triggered consequences of escalating severity. While these operations unfolded, humans continued to expand their intelligence network, integrating alien technologies with human innovations, creating predictive models capable of anticipating enemy maneuvers before they were enacted, and using these models to coordinate multi-sector interventions that simultaneously protected allies, disrupted hostile operations, and demonstrated the precision, adaptability, and foresight that defined humanity's strategic advantage. And even as the alien empires attempted to regroup and reassess, they were confronted with the reality that every prior assumption about human weakness, unpredictability, and the limits of their technology was false, and that each misjudgment had compounded into a series of cascading failures that now threatened not only individual fleets but entire sectors under imperial control. And humans, with patience and calculation, ensured that each action reinforced a narrative that Earth's restraint had limits, and that the consequences of further provocation would be absolute and strategically unavoidable. In the midst of this unfolding transformation, human leaders coordinated with allied species to deploy advanced surveillance, logistical, and defense systems across contested sectors, reinforcing positions and providing rapid response capabilities that could appear anywhere an alien force attempted aggression, effectively creating a dynamic operational grid that allowed humans to dominate without continuous engagement. And the impact on alien morale was profound, as commanders began doubting prior training, assumptions, and the loyalty of occupied populations, while Earth coalition grew stronger, more cohesive, and increasingly capable of shaping outcomes in ways that the galaxy's empires could neither predict nor counter. And as a first major offensive withdrawal occurred by a Zalfek fleet, leaving critical territories exposed and vulnerable, the full realization hit. Humanity was no longer a passive observer, but an active arbiter of power, a species whose patience, foresight, technology, and moral clarity had combined to create an unprecedented force that redefined the balance of the known galaxy. And the catastrophic consequences of centuries of misjudgment were now unfolding in real time, with humans poised to ensure that every empire learned that Earth's underestimated potential was not only real but operational, decisive, and unavoidable. With the galaxy now fully aware of humanity's strategic, technological, and diplomatic superiority, Earth shifted from a posture of calculated intervention to one of consolidation, securing contested systems, fortifying key hyperspace routes, and expanding the coalition of allied civilizations into a network that no empire could ignore. And the first irreversible consequences manifested when Zalfek and Varen fleets, still reeling from previous defeats, attempted to reclaim lost positions, only to encounter human forces whose precision, coordination, and predictive capabilities rendered any offensive operation futile, as orbital defenses neutralized propulsion, energy, and communication systems, while autonomous drone swarms immobilized ships and secured critical infrastructure, forcing alien commanders into defensive retreats and exposing vulnerabilities that humans then leveraged to strengthen their strategic position. And in the councils of Celestari, Zalfek, and Varen, debates erupted between those who advocated negotiation, those who sought to strike before further losses, and those paralyzed by fear and disbelief, revealing the depth of their systemic misjudgment. Because every empire now understood that their centuries-long assumptions about humanity had been catastrophically flawed, and that every decision made under those false assumptions had contributed to a situation they could no longer control. Simultaneously, human forces executed multi-sector operations that simultaneously reinforced allies, neutralized hostile positions, and disrupted supply chains, all while maintaining a moral high ground that amplified loyalty among liberated civilizations and demonstrated to the galaxy that human dominance was not rooted in conquest, but in precision, strategic foresight, and the protection of those weaker than themselves. And the psychological impact was profound, as alien officers, diplomats, and even scientists began to question their own judgments, doubting the reliability of prior intelligence, the effectiveness of their training, and the viability of their command structures in the face of humans who anticipated every move, leveraged every error, and executed interventions with flawless timing. And reports of human operations spread quickly across the galaxy, creating a reputation for Earth as an unyielding arbiter of strategic balance, one whose patience and restraint had limits, and whose response to provocation would be absolute, calculated, and unavoidable. On Earth, the High Command coordinated this consolidation with unprecedented efficiency, integrating intelligence from allied civilizations, predictive modeling of enemy movements, and adaptive technologies capable of countering any foreseeable attack. And as humans deployed orbital platforms, hyperspace-capable rapid response fleets, and advanced surveillance networks, they not only secured previously vulnerable systems, but also created overlapping zones, of control that allowed them to monitor and influence multiple sectors simultaneously, ensuring that any alien attempt at aggression would be detected, countered, and neutralized before it could gain momentum, and this visibility and control further amplified human leverage in diplomatic negotiations, forcing alien powers to confront the reality that their prior arrogance had created a strategic situation beyond their ability to reverse, and that continued hostility would only compound their losses. As the first formal peace proposals arrived from Celestari and Zalfek councils, humanity leveraged them to establish enforceable boundaries, trade protocols, and security agreements that codified the consequences of misjudgment while simultaneously protecting allies, and these agreements, combined with ongoing strategic interventions, reinforced a perception that Earth was both a moral and practical center of power in contested sectors, leaving empires no choice but to acknowledge the reality of human capability, the futility of aggression, and the inevitability of consequences for miscalculation. And as Varan fleets retreated to regroup under increasingly constrained conditions, human rapid response contingents moved to fortify newly allied systems, integrate newly liberated territories, and create adaptive operational networks capable of responding instantaneously to any threat, ensuring that the galaxy understood the scope and permanence of Earth's influence. Concurrently, humans continue to cultivate alliances with previously oppressed or overlooked civilizations, sharing technology, logistical support, and intelligence networks that magnified their own capabilities while creating dependencies that reinforced loyalty and trust. And as these networks matured, alien powers recognized that every aggressive action against Earth or its allies now risked cascading consequences across multiple systems, sectors, and species, effectively trapping them in a situation where misjudgment could no longer be corrected, and every move had to be measured against the reality of human foresight, adaptability, and moral clarity, with fleets, diplomats, and strategists realizing that centuries of arrogance, ignorance, and dismissal had resulted in irreversible strategic disadvantage. And as humans prepared the final stages of consolidation, coordinating multi-sector defense grids, hyperspace choke points, and integrated allied operations, they demonstrated to the galaxy that their restraint had been deliberate, that their patience had allowed the empires to make every mistake possible, and that their ultimate strength was not only technological or military, but systemic, psychological, and moral, combining intelligence, foresight, coordination, and ethical authority to create a situation where further misjudgment was impossible without dire consequences. And as alien empires surveyed the transformed balance of power, they understood in stark, undeniable terms that humanity had evolved from a disregarded backwater to a decisive arbiter of galactic stability, a species whose underestimated potential had cascaded into a series of catastrophic consequences, leaving the empires with no choice but to accept that the age of trivializing humanity was over, and that the future of the galaxy would now be defined by the strategic, technological, and moral authority of Earth and its allies, a consequence of arrogance that could not be undone, only respected, managed, and, if ignored, suffered. As the galaxies struggled to comprehend the irreversible shifts in power, humanity moved with deliberate finality, executing the last phase of their strategic consolidation, a combination of military, technological, and diplomatic measures that would permanently define the balance of influence across multiple sectors. And the consequences for alien empires who had long underestimated humans became unmistakably clear, with Zalfek, Varan, and Celestari fleets operating under strict constraints. Territories previously exploited by aggression now protected under Earth's watch, and every attempt at unilateral action meticulously countered by networks of rapid response forces, orbital platforms, and allied contingents whose coordination and foresight left no avenue for surprise or advantage, demonstrating that misjudging humanity had not only been a strategic error but a catastrophic failure with consequences extending across the galaxy. And while humans had acted decisively, their approach maintained consistent moral clarity, prioritizing protection of allied species, minimizing unnecessary destruction, and reinforcing the principle that Earth's strength was measured not only in firepower but in restraint, intelligence, and ethical authority. Across contested sectors, liberated civilizations flourish under human protection, contributing to intelligence networks, resource distribution, and technological development that further amplified Earth's influence. And the Psychological impact on alien empires were profound, as fleets once confident in their superiority were forced into cautious stances. Diplomatic councils now debated within the parameters set by humans, and centuries of arrogance dissolved under the weight of demonstrated human capability. And in every strategic discussion, decision, and maneuver, the lesson was undeniable. The species they had dismissed as inconsequential had mastered coordination, foresight, and adaptability to a degree that made traditional dominance untenable, and every misstep from this point forward risked further consequences that could not be mitigated by old assumptions or force alone. In the corridors of power on Earth, leaders coordinated a final wave of measures designed to stabilize newly allied systems, secure critical resources, and formalize interstellar agreements that codify both the protection of weaker civilizations and the permanent recognition of humanity's capabilities, while simultaneously signaling to alien powers that aggression would no longer be tolerated and that misjudgment would invite immediate, calculated consequences. And as these agreements were ratified, humans also deployed advanced monitoring and rapid response nodes capable of instant intervention anywhere across the known sectors, creating a situation where the galaxy's empires had no choice but to recognize Earth authority in matters of strategic consequence, because every potential challenge could be detected, analyzed, and neutralized before it could escalate. At the same time, humans allowed communication channels to remain open, offering collaboration, trade, and joint exploration to alien civilizations willing to acknowledge the new balance of power. And through these initiatives, they demonstrated that dominance was not exercised through terror or oppression, but through a combination of intelligence, foresight, technological mastery, and moral clarity, effectively reshaping the concept of interstellar leadership while securing loyalty, cooperation, and trust among civilizations previously marginalized or oppressed. And this approach created a lasting stability that alien empires could neither undermine nor ignore, reinforcing the permanence of humanity's position as a decisive force. As fleets repositioned, supply routes secured, and allied civilizations integrated fully into the new operational network, the empires confronted a stark reality: centuries of underestimating. Humanity had produced a cascade of failures, strategic setbacks, and irreversible losses, leaving them forced to accept not only Earth's strength, but also the consequences of arrogance and misjudgment. An internal debate shifted from whether to challenge humans to how to adapt, survive, and cooperate within a framework defined by the very species they had once dismissed, while humans, having orchestrated this transformation with patience, precision, and foresight, ensured that every action reinforce the principle that misjudging a species capable of such coordination, resilience, and moral clarity is not merely a mistake but a catastrophe, the effects of which ripple across generations, systems, and civilizations. In the final months of consolidation, humanity demonstrated their ultimate capability not through conquest, but through the seamless integration of defense, diplomacy, and protection, establishing protocols that secured allied populations, stabilized contested sectors, and projected influence in a manner that was predictable to humans but unpredictable to alien empires, creating a persistent advantage that would endure for decades. And the psychological, technological, and strategic lessons of this era became etched into the collective memory of the galaxy, as leaders and commanders alike recognized that Earth's patience, foresight, and capability had turned centuries of underestimation into permanent strategic dominance, a testament to the resilience, ingenuity, and moral authority of humanity. And as the final reports filtered back to every council chamber, ship, and observatory across the stars, one undeniable truth emerged. For those who had misjudged humans, the catastrophe was not just a warning but a defining reality, the consequences of arrogance laid bare, and the galaxy would never again treat humanity as insignificant, because Earth had proven, once and for all, that underestimated potential could become an unstoppable force, reshaping power, influence, and destiny across the cosmos. And in that moment, humanity's place in the galaxy was secure, not through fear or domination alone, but through a combination of intelligence, preparation, moral clarity, and decisive action, a legacy that would define interstellar relations for generations to come.